united by common ideals and shared values, 15 accomplished individuals founded a true professional partnership, now known as Cruz, Marcelo, and Tenefrancia. This partnership of accomplished professionals was forged on a commitment to build a lasting legal institution that will carry on the values of professionalism, meritocracy, and mutual respect that brought them unparalleled success for over 3 decades. The firm's name, Cruz, Marcelo, and Tenefrancia, exemplify the partnership's commitment to excellence as true practitioners of the noble profession of law. The firm is led by Avelino Nonong Cruz Jr., who previously served our nation as Secretary of National Defense and Chief Presidential Legal Counsel. Nonong graduated cum laude and salutatorian of UP Law Class of 1977. He is a bar top-notcher and, while serving in government, led groundbreaking reforms in the military and defense establishment, which have now become benchmarks for public sector reforms. The firm's chairman is Simeon Sani Marcelo, who is our nation's former ombudsman and Solicitor General. Sani was also among the top graduates of the UP Law Class of 1978 and is also a bar top-notcher. As one of the country's top, he led a panel of lawyers that successfully convicted a former president of plunder. Under his watch, our nation recovered billions of ill-gotten wealth from the Marcoses. For all his accomplishments in public service, he is highly regarded by the Washington Post as one who restored credibility to the office of the Ombudsman in the fight against corruption. Sonny is currently serving his 2nd term as a member of the Independent Advisory Board of the World Bank. As a forward-looking partnership, the firm's name now includes that of Joe Nathan Joey Tenefrancia, who is the firm's managing partner. He previously served as Senior Deputy Executive Secretary for Legal Affairs. Joey was salutatorian of UP Law Class of 1990 and a former Chancellor of the Order of the Purple Feather Honor Society. He is a recipient of the Dean's Medal for Academic Excellence and represents the next generation of partners who will continue the legacy of professionalism and excellence. Cruz, Marcelo, and Tenefrancia are joined by 12 other exceptional lawyers in the partnership. They are highly respected by their peers for providing sought-after legal counsel to leaders of our nation, captains of industry, and the common man. All 15 partners, together with the firm's associates and non-legal personnel, who count among the best in the profession, are bound by a commitment to deliver the highest quality of service to help the firm's clients attain success and contribute to nation building. Together, practicing law as one firm, Cruz, Marcelo, and Tenefrancia provides unparalleled legal representation in various fields of law as a full-service firm. Litigation and dispute resolution, trial advocacy and commercial litigation, banking litigation, tax litigation, appellate practice, alternative dispute resolution, corporate rehabilitation, corporate and commercial law, capital markets, securities regulation and finance, banking and finance, debt restructuring and corporate reorganization, mergers and acquisitions, property development and real estate transactions, tourism and leisure, gaming, immigration, intellectual property, trademarks, Philippine patent prosecution of PCT applications, copyright, media entertainment and broadcasting, intellectual property commercialization, licensing and franchising, administrative IP litigation, IP enforcement action, mining and natural resources, energy, nationality and capitalization requirements, compliance, government approvals, licenses and registrations, appropriate transaction and governance structures, investments, taxation, innovative tax solutions for foreign and local individuals and corporations, infrastructure, transportation and public utilities, telecommunications and information communication technology, labor and employment, labor standards compliance, labor relations, labor litigation and appellate practice, trade, Cruz, Marcelo, and Tenefrancia. Creativity, mastery, and trust. The legacy of excellence and professionalism continues.
Good afternoon, everyone. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Thank you for joining us for this timely talk this afternoon. Our talk will be on authentications, fakes, and forgeries. This topic is important to us at Fundacion Sansó because it is central to our mandate of protecting the legacy of Mr. Juvenal Sansó. And with the growth of the art market, there are more people engaged in making fakes and more people are being fooled into buying them. The legacy of many artists, both living and not, are tarnished by works being passed off as theirs, and many collectors end up losing a lot of money for something that is not authentic. Many of these unscrupulous people even forge certificates and signatures of authorities just to fool buyers into thinking that what they are buying is the real deal. At Fundacion Sansó, we offer authentication service to the public for a fee. It is done by a panel of experts who have to unanimously agree that the artworks are unquestionably real, and we offer certificates that are hard to forge. The proceeds of this service enables us to operate the museum and allow the public free entrance. And it also empowers us to continue with our scholarships for art students, something that Mr. Juvenal Sansó himself has done for many years in private. This afternoon, we will have a lively discussion based on the real-life experience of the family of national artist Abdulmari, Imao Sr., represented by Mr. and Mrs. Toym and Lee Imao. It will be followed by an overview of the laws regarding intellectual property rights and the legal recourse of people who experience wrongs connected with it, such as when a collector buys a fake painting or if an artist sees that his works are being faked. And for that, we are so honored to have as our guest speaker the head of the Intellectual Property Department of Cruz, Marcelo, and Tenefrancia Law Office, Attorney Susan Villanueva. Please stay on after the lively discussion to be able to get our speakers' contact details. To maximize the discussion this afternoon, please allow me to introduce our first set of speakers. Our first set of speakers are a husband and wife team. They have been tasked by the other members of the family of our national artist, Abdulmari Imao Sr., to document and certify real works of their father and also to limit the trading of fake works being passed off as his. The first half of the team is a very good friend. He is an artist himself. He has made a sterling reputation for himself through his many public art installations which comment on the contemporary state of our country. Many of us have seen his Voltes 5, Daimos, and Mazinger Z inspired installations that have graced the University of the Philippines and landed on the front covers of our major dailies. His installation Desaparecidos, which was mounted at the Bantayog ng mga Bayani, is considered as one of the most potent commemorations of the martial law era abuses. He is also a very established sculptor of public monuments, such as the Tandansora National Shrine in Quezon City, the Andres Bonifacio National Shrine in Maragondon, Cavite, and the Dr. Jose Rizal statue in Carson City, California. These are just some of his many works. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Toym Imao. Magandang hapon, Toym!
Magandang hapon, Ricky. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. I'm joined here by my wife, si Lee. And
I will introduce you.
and Lee currently is the one who's really holding the records in terms of yung mga documentation about the works of my father, Abdulmari Imao Sr. No? Siguro before I start, dalawang magiging ano namin, no? Sharing namin dito, and I'll be brief because I'd rather answer some questions, no? But I'll give you some examples. Lee, siguro in just a few minutes lang, would run you through the process in which we authenticate, no? Then I will, in my turn naman, I will cite together with some images, 5 images of artworks na gagawin kong sample on some case studies, no? And so I'll probably, Ricky, is it okay if I turn it over to Lee first para to establish the process?
I'll just introduce Lee. Because she is your better half after all, I'd like to let the public know that Lee is also very accomplished in many things other than what she is doing currently to document the works of national artist Abdulmari Imao. Prior to focusing on documentation, Lee has been working for a long time at the developmental field. She has been a former grants administrator at the Ford Foundation, a project officer at the Local Government Development Foundation, and she has served as a congressional fellow at the House of Representatives of the Philippines, among many other posts in the government. So Lee, magandang hapon. Thank you for joining us. So take it away.
Hello, yes. Good afternoon. So I'll give lang a run through about how we accept and authenticate works for Abdulmari Imao Sr., the father of Toym. So we are reached through social media or through Messenger and Facebook. So what we do is, as much as possible, we would like the persons requesting the authentication to bring the works to us physically so that we can review and check. Because as you know, if it's sent through social media or internet, it's very difficult to see the details of the painting because usually thumbnails lang yon, and it's very easy to change the colors of the work because of the lighting or the filters used. So to be fair to everyone concerned, it is better talaga if you bring the artworks to the studio. So when you bring the artworks, if you have certificates of authentication or other documentation that are attached to the artwork, please bring those too, so we can also check them. And also, to know more about the person who's requesting the authentication, we ask for the provenance of the artwork. The provenance is the history of ownership of the artwork. So I know it's not usually possible to trace back yung original owner, especially if the painting or artwork has been sold and resold. So that's very difficult. But as much as possible, we would like to have the history of ownership because the names of previous owners will help us check our records. It's easier to check our records if we have names to look for rather than to look for yung image ng artwork. So if you want a faster authentication, the more details you can give us about the sale, resale, provenance of the artwork, the better it is for everyone. So we also request that the owner of the artwork accomplish an affidavit of ownership. So, kasama na dun sa affidavit of ownership yung provenance, yung history, how it ended up as your owned property. Diba? So, nandoon yon. If the owner cannot bring the artwork to us, or if they connected with us through a representative, then we ask for SPA or special power of attorney from the owner authorizing the representative to deal with us about the authentication. This is again also for the protection of the owner, because we have had one instance where an artwork was brought to us complete with documentation, and we know it's original, but I recognize the work as someone the owner told me that he will never ever sell. So when I contacted the owner, it turned out that the work was stolen from him by a close family member, and he didn't know. He didn't notice it until the artwork was brought to us for authentication. So we were able to contact the owner and inform them that the artwork is being sold and it's with us for authentication. So in a way, it also helped the owner not to keep their property safe. So at the end of the presentation, we will also give you how you can reach us, and how you can set appointments with us, because now because of the pandemic, it's very difficult to just allow people to walk in. So we have to set appointments, because we have older people, senior citizens in the house. So as much as possible, we try to limit visitors, or when we do have visitors, we try to schedule them so that they will not come all at the same time. So now maybe Toym can show you how we have received several requests that unfortunately we were not able to authenticate as Imaos. And then through his case studies, you might be able to learn a few things on how to protect yourself as a buyer and how to protect your work as an artist. So Toym?
Yes. Hello again. Okay, so I will be sharing, we'll be sharing 5 images later on of works that will be parang springboard of what I wanted to bring up regarding fake works. No? In this particular examples, you will see that we were able to identify the original works, and at the same time, not only one but 2 or 3 versions of that particular work that has gone around. No? Okay, can we pull up the very first image, please, of the PowerPoint? Not the painting. As an example. Is it up? I'm sorry, I just can't see it. Is the image of the PowerPoint up? Okay. Can we make it a little bigger, the image? Okay, thank you. Okay. As you've seen here, the original work is on the left side, and we have 2 versions that came out. No, the version 1 is a very what we call parang mapusyaw. No, it's a very light colored representation of the first one, and it has been done in reverse. No, and version 2 is the exact copy. Supposedly the exact copy of the original. And on the third image on the right is a fake certification. And obviously, if you see the coloration of the certification, it's not the same, with what the paintings that's being depicted, no. So we have certain mga nuances that we identify, no, in the work. And minsan kasi meron kaming what we call mga suki na mga artworks that are being forged, no. And which brings me to the very first point that I want to raise internet is the source, no? It is unfortunate that the internet has given us the opportunity to share and disseminate democratically accessible works of art by different artists, but unscrupulous individuals have used it in order to copy, fake works, no. And one surefire way of identifying this is that if you have a particular gallery who has posted works, no, by the being sold or on auction houses, most likely it will be forged, no, within a couple of weeks or even months, no. And we've been able to identify these certain works and certain establishments, which yung mga web page nila become the source, no, of fake works, no. So I think, as collectors also, you have to exercise a certain level of prudence in terms of sharing the kinds of work out there, no. You run the risk of those being copied by forgers. And pero syempre, if we wanted to share it, no, kailangan na rin tayo siguro nagse-self-police ng mga collection natin so that we are aware that these kinds of work, no, are being forged. Sometimes we do inform the original owners of the work na, oy, may peke na trabaho ng sayo, ikaw nang bahala kung paano ka maghabol. Kung gusto mong habulin itong nagbebenta. And we share links, no, where it is being sold, no, either on marketplace or on carousel, no, nakikita natin dyan, or in the different online selling platforms and groups in Facebook. Okay? Ang pinaka sinasabi na lang namin for collectors, buyers, and dealers, never post the certification online, no, as much as possible. It is in a need to know, need to see basis lang dapat. Kung sakaling pakikita nila, gawan ng paraan na parang very trusted lang ipapasa nila yung information and write it down para alam nila kung kanino nila sharing information na yun. Kasi nasa certification, yung size ng painting, yung finish, yung year, other details, no? Pag yan ay lumabas in public, it will be easier to forge because magagawa nila on the proper size, no? Because it has all the specifications and the year, no, ng particular artwork na ito. So the first is internet is the source. The second slide, please, no? Even if I wanted to show you, ito rin may version 1, 2, and 3 pa na ano. And we're also sharing to you a screenshot of the website in which it came from, no, na pinaggayahan nila, no. We have been able to track down 3 individuals who were the source, no, of this particular kinds of work, no. But even though we can identify them, we cannot put it in public, no. All we can do is document this work and get as much information from the dealers who are peddling this work or the online platforms. Take screenshots of not only the posting but the conversations and even the chats, no, na nangyari sa inyo about how this information is shared, no? So this particular kind of work has been recently being sold online, one of the versions of this particular work. Okay, and once you have this particular kinds of paintings, no, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can kumbaga sequester it or you get hold of it even if it's brought to our studio, no. We can never hold a work even if it's a fake work by our father, no, because it's still private property and there are legal implications in holding a particular work. What we do is that before we release the work, there are paperworks that need to be signed in order to properly release the work. And sinabi nga ni Lee kanina, we're only releasing the work to the owners of the work na based on an affidavit or a special power of attorney given to the owner of the work, no, to the dealer or representative para i-release namin yung trabaho na yon. Which brings me to the third point, no, of my talk, and can we share the third slide? Third slide ng ano natin ng image, no? Establish a paper trail. Document well because doon nakikita natin yung history ng trabaho kung saan siya umiikot. And kung merong repeat offender. Sometimes kasi pag when we inform a particular dealer na questionable yung work and we are trying to get too much we got some more information, nawawala na, the trail goes cold, no? It's because umiiwas na sila, nagtatago na or anything, no? Any other reasons, no? So ang importante is to tactfully in our case we tactfully ano tawag dito, try to get as much information from these different dealers, no? And meron na kaming case na nagkaroon ng repeat offender, no, after a couple of years, no, inilabas niya ulit having full knowledge that it's not authentic work. Tinanete na namin siya ng legal actions kasi meron siyang pinirmahan na acknowledging that he is informed, no, that it is a fake work. It's not a work by our father. So, importante yon that you be diligent in keeping track, no? Keeping screenshots, keeping images, and jotting down conversations on what transpired during the investigation of a particular work. Now, on the fourth image, no, can we, ginagamit ko lang yung mga samples nito to give you an idea on the different representation, no, ng mga trabaho, no? Yung mga different kinds of works na napapakita namin is mga nakikita natin online, no? Online. And once you find a particular work na questionable or it's obviously a very fake work, no? Unang-una, try to be calm. Huwag masyadong agit nga. Minsan yung kahit nakakagalit, no, you have to keep your cool. You have to maintain a very cordial relationship with the person who has approached you, no? Even though at a certain point, yung iba nagiging parang very, defensive na, no? Nilalambing, kinakausap namin ng mabuti. We try to befriend them so that they will be, and we try to introduce to them certain issues that kung hindi sila magko-cooperate, pwede sila ma-implicate now that it's brought to their attention. And we have befriended several dealers who have been victimized by fake works. No? Dinadaan nila yung mga trabaho sa mga small galleries, antique shops, independent dealers. No? And marami na kaming dealers na nakakaawa. Minsan sila pa yung nagsha-shell out ng pera pero wala na yung original owner supposedly. Or it's being dealt by another dealer who has been given the work by another dealer. Kaya para patong-patong na. So we try not to build to burn bridges. We establish good relationships with them. And dalawang trabaho yung nabili niya, in-approach na, tapos nung sinabi kong hindi totoo yung trabaho, wala na yung nagbenta sa kanya, wala na, hindi na nagpakita. Pero we continued having this relationship. Sabi ko na pag meron pang nabalitaan ka or kaibigan mo na nagsesell, sabihan mo kami. And it paid off because we were able to track down several fake works because of the tips that are being given to us by dealers, no, independent dealers, galleries, and antique shops that we have established good relationship with. And even naka-retrieve pa kami ng very old authentic works of our dad because nilapitan sila ng mga antique shops ng mga small dealers na ito. So it is good that you continue good relationships with these individuals. Which brings me to my last point now, no? As a family, as a fellow artist, as an artist myself, no? You have to be very familiar or at least familiarize yourself with all the online platforms that are available out there. It is very important that you are in the know, you are in the loop, no? It is also very important. I make it a point that I'm very visible in several of the online groups of artists, no? Visible and not necessarily engaging, no? But being a part of it and siguro nagko-comment once in a while or sharing a post, no? Para madali ka at maging accessible kami sa kanila. And dito kasi dinadaan no? Lahat ng mga forgeries, no? Alternative platforms, not the big galleries most of the time. Pero we have also identified several works that are being passed off in auction houses and big galleries then, no? So it is important, no? We have already established some relationships with them, and they constantly consult with us, no? If ever they are going to put something up for sale muna, no? And pag sinabi naman namin, kasi hindi namin technically sinasabi fake yan, no? It's not a work by our father, no? We cannot, and if you're asking for an authentication with very little information, we just tell them na we are sorry, we cannot give you papers for it because of lack of data, no, that will prove that it is this is an authentic kind of work, no. We just refuse, no, and we just say sorry, ganun talaga, no, lalo na yung may intent to sell. Pero sinasabi namin doon sa ibang collectors na kung yan yung kwento nyo, binenta sa inyo, walang authentication, and hindi namin siya masabihan, mabigyan ng papel, pero for your private collection lang, write it down, no, kung anong yung circumstances and how you acquired it, put it in paper, and because if it's only for your own personal appreciation yung artwork, you don't need authentication anymore, no? Kung lalo na kung you know intent on selling the particular work. So yeah, and right now, being part of the University of the Philippines College of Fine Arts, no, as part of the faculty, we're also discussing these things about authenticity at saka yung mga intellectual property rights among our students as early as second year, no? I think it is very important that you also educate the artist on what constitutes forgeries, no? What constitutes derivative works or homage, no? Kasi marami nagpapalusot dyan, may mga nakita kami na wala man pirma ng father ko, exact na trabaho ang ginawa. And pinipirma nila yung sarili nilang pangalan. So there are also implications na ano dyan. And siguro yung other concerns I will probably answer dun sa question and answer portion. Pero the things that I've shared right now hopefully becomes a starting point in which we can have a discussion later on the merits of having works authenticated by experts or the family or the heirs of a particular artist. Thank you.
Ayun. Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Lee. Grabe nakita natin yung iba't ibang versions ng pag-fake at pag-forge dito sa samples pa lang na pinakita nila Tom at nila Lee. And we have also, Tom and Lee have been so generous in sharing with us yung different aspects of what they have to go through during the documentation and authentication of a work. And I'm sure ang dami-daming mga questions. I'm looking at our feed, ang daming questions right now. But please, reserve your questions kasi meron pa tayong isa pang speaker. So, Tom, Lee, I hope you don't mind. I'll ask you to be in the back room muna. And I will introduce our new speaker. Thank you so much for the sharing, ang lalim. So, our new speaker is someone we are so grateful to have this afternoon. Attorney Susan Villanueva heads the Cruz, Marcelo, and Tenefrancia Intellectual Property Department and is the principal litigator of intellectual property and enforcement cases. She has represented clients engaged in broadcasting, consumer care, pharmaceuticals, IT, manufacturing, and banking. Attorney Villanueva is a professorial lecturer of IP law at her alma mater, the University of the Philippines College of Law, where she graduated salutatorian and cum laude. And she holds a Master's of Law degree from the prestigious Yale University. She is even admitted to practice in New York. She has also served as co-chairperson of the Advisory Council for Intellectual Property, a committee composed of experts advising the Director General of the IPO on various matters. So, sobrang excited po kami, Attorney Susan Villanueva, to have you here this afternoon, and we're so looking forward to learning from you this afternoon. You're on mute po, ma'am.
Okay, good afternoon, Ricky. Thank you very much for the invitation. And I think the first thing that I should discuss would be the legal aspect of forgeries, right? And so it's very important to discuss what are the consequences when somebody deals in a forged artwork or a forged certification. So may I request Vero to please PowerPoint
Yes.
presentation. So bear with me as I give you a lecture on the legal framework on forgeries. For a person who was defrauded because the person purchased a forged artwork, the buyer has two remedies under the law. That would be a criminal remedy or a civil remedy. So if you purchase a forged artwork and you discover it's a forgery, you have a choice of filing a criminal case against the one who sold you the painting or the forged artwork, or you file a civil case. But as I will discuss later, perhaps in the Q&A, I would strongly recommend that instead of a civil case, that you initiate a criminal case. Next slide, please, Pero. Next slide, please. So if it's a civil case, you actually are suing based on a breach of warranty. And if you file a civil case, you have a choice between withdrawing from the contract and demanding a proportionate reduction of the price with damages in either case. So you can rescind the contract and demand that you be repaid what you have paid to the seller, and you can ask for damages because the artwork that was sold to you was not a genuine artwork. Next slide, please. But of course, as I've said, it is always, that's the civil remedy. It's based on implied warranty. And the vendor is responsible to the vendee for any hidden faults or defects in what was sold to the buyer, even though he was not aware of it. And it shall, of course, this shall not apply if the contrary has been stipulated, if there is a contract and the vendor was not aware of the hidden faults or defects in the thing sold. So that's the only exception if you're going to base your civil cause of action on implied warranty. Can we go to the criminal actions that you can file? If you're going to file a criminal case against the seller of a forged artwork, there are different causes of action. You can sue. Next slide, please, Vero. Vero, next slide, please. So you can sue under a special law. There's a special law specifically on art forgery, and this is called Art Forgery Act of 2001. Next slide, please. And this would include any work of art which is defined as original works of art like paintings, sculpture, drawings, and artwork produced in multiples such as graphic and photographic works and sculpture. But it shall not include works intended to be mass-produced for commercial use. Next slide, please. So it covers an art dealer who is defined as any person or entity who sells or otherwise deals in works of fine art for profit or gain, such as art galleries, art brokers, and agents. Next slide, please, Vero. Now, what does the Art Forgery Act of 2001 prohibit? What does it penalize? Well, it penalizes anyone who affixes or causes to appear a usurped or forged signature or sign in any work of fine art. It also penalizes anyone who counterfeits or imitates any original signature or sign with the intent to deceive the public or the buyer as to the authorship of a work of art. Next slide, please, Vero. It also penalizes selling or circulating any work of fine art bearing forged or usurped signatures or signs. And it prohibits and penalizes imitating or reproducing any work of fine art with intent to deceive the public or the buyer as to the authenticity of the work. Next slide, please. And the person's criminally liable for these acts. It's the person who affixed a forged signature on the artwork. So if you were asked by someone to affix a forged signature, know that you would be criminally liable under the Art Forgery Act of 2001, even though you did not participate in the selling. Secondly, it's any person who sells an artwork with a forged or fake signature. And also a person who imitated or reproduced an artwork even without forging the signature. So even if there's no forged signature, for as long as the artwork is a fake or fake reproduction, there is liability, provided there is intent to deceive the public or the buyer as to the authenticity of the artwork. Next slide, please. And what is the penalty? The penalty is imprisonment of not less than 6 years and 1 day, but not more than 12 years, and a fine of not less than 50,000, but not more than 500,000 pesos. Note that the penalty here, the judge is compelled not only to make a person liable for the payment of a fine, but the judge is compelled to impose a prison sentence. And it's not less than 6 years and 1 day until not more than 12 years. And if it's committed by a company or a juridical entity, the penalty shall be imposed on its chief executive officer and or other officials. So the CEO and other officials would be made liable for the prohibited acts committed by the juridical entity or the company. Next slide, please. And if it's committed by art dealers or the owners or operators of art galleries, in addition to the penalties that I've spoken about, there will be an automatic revocation of their license to operate. Next slide, please. Now, if in filing a criminal case, you can also sue the one who forged the signature or who forged an artwork under other deceits pursuant to Article 318 of the Revised Penal Code. The Forgery Act did not expressly repeal prior laws. So it can be argued that this is another basis to sue a person. And that would be Article 318 of the Revised Penal Code. So any person who defrauds or damages another by any other deceit shall be criminally liable. So it falls under 318, the counterfeiting of an artwork may fall under other deceits in the Revised Penal Code. And what is the penalty? It's quite low, 1 month and 1 day to 6 months, and a fine of not less than the amount of the damage caused and not more than twice such amount. So because of the lower penalty under other deceits, it might be better for the buyer to resort to a criminal case under the Art Forgery Act of 2001. Next slide, please. Now, what if the certificate of authenticity is also falsified? There is a separate act that can be that is criminally prohibited or made that causes a criminal liability or exposure, and it's punishable under the Revised Penal Code. And the law provides that any person who to the damage of a third party or with intent to cause such damage shall in any private document commit any acts of falsification. So submitting a certificate of authenticity is an act of falsification and is punishable under the Revised Penal Code. So in addition to forging a signature on the painting or reproducing a counterfeit copy of the painting, which are punishable under the Forgery Act of 2001, you can also be separately liable under 172 subparagraph 2 of the Revised Penal Code for falsification. Next slide, please. And falsification is defined under 171, and it includes counterfeiting or using any handwriting, signature, or rubric, causing it to appear that persons have participated in any act when they did not in fact so participate, and issuing in an authenticated form a document purporting to be a copy of an original document when no such original exists, or including in such copy a statement contrary to or different from that of the genuine original. Next slide, please. And what's the penalty for falsification? It's 6 months and 1 day to 6 years. in its medium and maximum periods, and a fine of not more than 1 million pesos shall be imposed. Article 172, the revised penal code, was amended by 10951. Next slide, please. Now, if let's say the artist's work was actually reproduced, in addition to liability under the Art Forgery Act and the revised penal code, the artist can sue for copyright infringement because the owner of a copyrighted work has the exclusive right to reproduce the work. And if somebody reproduces the work without authority, then the one who made the unauthorized copy is liable for copyright infringement. Next slide, please. And note that under copyright infringement, the one made liable criminally for copyright infringement is not just the one who directly commits the reproduction or the infringement. It also includes any person who benefits from the infringing activity of another who commits an infringement if the person benefiting has been given notice of the infringing activity and has the right and ability to control the activities of the other. And it also includes any person with knowledge of the infringing activity induces, causes, or materially contributes to infringing conduct of another. So the person liable is not just the one who made the unauthorized reproduction, but any person who either benefits or who induces or materially contributes to the infringement. Next slide, please, Vero. And note, a possessor. Suppose there's an art gallery or dealer possessing fake or counterfeited or copyright infringing works. Would that possessor be liable? There's actually a specific provision under the IP Code, Section 217. A possessor can be liable if he knows or ought to know that what he has in possession is an infringing copy of the work, and he possesses it for purposes of selling, letting for hire, or offering or exposing for sale or hire the article, distributing the article for purpose of trade, and the trade exhibit of the article in public. So a mere possessor who has not yet sold a forged or unauthorized reproduction of a work may become liable if the elements of 217 are present. Next slide, please. What would be the criminal penalties? Well, for the first offense, it's imprisonment of 1 year to 3 years plus a fine of 50,000 to 150,000. If you commit a second offense, the penalties increase, as well as if you commit the same offense the third time. The penalties are gradated and it's increased depending on the number of offenses committed. Next slide, please. Oh, that's it. So that's the legal framework for forged or artworks that are reproduced without authority. Thank you very much.
Grabe pala, attorney, ang dami kong natutunan today. Hindi lang pala siya hindi lang siya simpleng civil case, it's also a criminal case.
Criminal case.
Hindi lang yung nagpinta ng fake, kundi pati kung ibang pumirma at kung sino rin yung nagbenta, at hindi
Yes.
lang yun kung kunwari merong nagpossess ng fake na to at ni-rent out or gumawa ng pera out of it, pwede rin
Or
pala
in exhibit.
Or
Or in
in
exhibit
exhibit.
niya. Yeah,
Wow.
for purposes of sale.
This is so, I didn't even know that it was this extensive. So I'm sure there are a lot of questions right now, and I will ask Toym and Lee to join us so we have a lively discussion, because I know kahit sila, they have a lot of questions regarding forgeries of their own authentication certificates, and kami din at Fundacion Sansó, we've encountered this so many times, and now we know we could sue those people as well. Toym, Lee, please unmute yourselves, and maybe you have some questions then, or maybe you could share. There.
Okay.
Ayun.
Well,
Lee?
yeah, that was malaman yung malaman yung presentation ni Susan regarding the legal implications of forged work, no. Yun nga lang talaga kami, we try to tactfully approach and handle every case of a forgery, no. We always err on, give the perpetrators or the one possessing or selling the work always the benefit of the doubt, no? Ang inaano namin is that after being informed and after being establishing a paper trail, pag doon pa sila nagkaroon naging repeat offender sila, that is the only time that we pursue actions, no? Lalo na kung apektado kami, pero kunyari apektado yung ibang tao about it and there is an exchange of goods or cash, no? For this forged work, ina-advise lang namin yung mga aggrieved parties na mag-pursue legally. And we can stand as witnesses na sabihin na, oy, in-approach kami ng dealer na yan, tinanong kung ano, sinabi namin, hindi yan totoong trabaho, may pirmahan, and you can use this para maghabol ka. So, yun nga, it's always a waiting game also for us. We do not have any police power, no, to enforce, no, upon but the best we can do is that we can document it well, investigate it on our own, and wait for any aggrieved party to approach us and seek help. And that is the only time we move as a family in order to address the issue.
I actually think that's the prudent way of handling this matter. As you know, the legal processes can also be abused and can be used as leverage as well. So I note that the process you've adopted is very prudent, and I think that's the best way to also insulate yourselves from liability, because you may also face countersuits, right? If you don't handle it in the prudent manner that you have been doing so. So I really think you did the right process in handling all these authentication requests, and the way you handle artworks that are doubtful.
Yun. We have several questions. I hope you don't mind, Attorney Witt. Maglalabas na ako dito. From Joel Cruz, I would like to clarify if the buyer of a fake has liability as well. Wouldn't it be beneficial to pattern after anti-fencing law, or a buyer or owner of a fake would also be liable?
Yung buyer kasi it's required that meron siyang act that's committed an act that would be penalized under the special law. While a special law like the Art Forgery Act does not require an intent, it requires that the buyer must be privy or must have done any of the acts that are prohibited. So if the buyer, especially if the buyer acts in good faith, wala naman siyang alam, di ba? Hindi naman niya alam. O nabiktima siya, nag-rely siya sa sweet talk ng galleries, di ba? Or the seller, alam mo naman, mga gagaling mag-market, di ba? So if the buyer relied in good faith and actually paid hard money for the artwork, then the buyer is actually a victim. And it's the buyer who has all these legal recourse under the law. But if the buyer actually commissioned the fake painting, liable yung buyer if the buyer was in on it. So remember yung copyright infringement, the one who induces is liable as an infringer, not as a accessory or accomplice, but as an infringer, and is already criminally liable. So depende sa buyer, Joel, hindi lahat ng buyer magiging liable.
Okay, thank you po. Another question from Marlon Manuel. Bilang bagong collector, ano po ang pinakamagandang gawin para maiwasan mabiktima ng mga peking artworks? Maybe Toy could weigh in on this.
Yeah. Actually, ang pinakaunang gawin siguro is kasi ang nangyayari na transaction is based on trust also. Kasi kung kakilala mo yung dealer or yung gallery, so you trust that they will give you an authentic artwork. So you should also be watching out for certain red flags. Like kami, ang ginagawa namin nito, pag may nire-request sa aming request for authentication, we also scour the internet. So tinitignan namin yung mga posibleng pagkopyahan. Katulad nung binanggit ni Tom kanina, na marami sa mga, kasi it's a parang library yung internet eh. Ang daming images na pwede nilang kopyahin and then pass it off as authentic. So if you have time, also check the images of that particular artist that you are interested in. Baka makita mo doon. And then you ask questions about the provenance, any documentation, any certificates. And when you feel that they're already not saying anything or medyo parang daw na sila, then that's a red flag also. Kasi if it's a transaction of trust, so dapat, as much as possible, they also give you as much information as they can, di ba? If it's an honest transaction.
Yeah.
Ayun.
Yeah.
There's a
And
question.
I'm sorry. Yeah, can I add to that,
Go ahead,
Ricky?
Fred.
Oo, yun nga, talagang you have to do due diligence when you're buying a particular work, lalo na mahal. Ang red flag, ang pinakamatinding red flag na lang dyan is pag may nag-offer sa iyo ng work, lalo na work ng national artist, binebenta lang ng 10, 15,000, 20,000 pesos, medyo kabahan ka na. I mean, that's already a giveaway that it's not a real work, di ba? Pangalawa, yung nagbebenta sa iyo at saka yung sinasabing purported owner, tinignan mo, Google is your friend. Google their names, Google their Facebook profiles. Pag nakita mo ron, isa, dalawa, tatlo lang yung friends or it's iba pa yung profile picture, no? It gives you an fair idea, no? And always transact as much as possible. We encourage mga bagong collectors, wag kayong matakot mag-approach ng mga established galleries who have really good working relationships with the artist family, heirs, or kung buhay pa yung artist, the artists themselves. They would be the best gatekeepers in order to protect your interest in terms of acquiring an authentic work. So, yung iba kasi takot na ayaw nang pumunta sa gallery, mahalin, pero yung safety, yung assurance ng pagkukuha ng isang trabaho at alam mo na pwede mong habulin yung gallery kasi established siya kung sakaling peke yung trabaho, that is something you cannot, quantify, yung peace of mind of getting a particular work, especially if it's a work that you plan to be an investment for the future.
Tama
Yeah,
yun.
but if I may also add, no, so there are independent agents or dealers connected with galleries, but sometimes they also do side businesses. So it's they may be connected to a gallery, but anong tawag dito, nag-ano sila. So they also deal on the side and not necessarily that artwork is in the gallery's portfolio. So you also have to double check things like that. Kasi posible kasi hindi rin alam nung dealer na mayroon binigay sa kanya na kaibigan niyang dealer, tulungan mo naman ako ibenta ito. So magbebenta siya. Pwedeng hindi rin niya alam yung na peke or questionable yung work na ginagawa niya, nadala niya. Pero again, yung dealer din, kailangan din due diligence also. I think it's due diligence all around for everyone.
Okay. Meron akong question dito from Marie Chris Castillo. Ask ko lang if kahit nakasulat sa artist ng painting na ginawa niya, copied from or inspired by sa painting na ginaya niya because inspired by a known artist, may legal liability din daw ba siya?
Okay. So under copyright law, as a general rule, if you reproduce the work of another and it's copyrighted, then you are committing copyright infringement. Ano yung exceptions? If the copyright has already expired, under our law, copyright only exists during the lifetime of the artist and 50 years after death. So the moment that duration has expired, the artwork falls into the public domain, so you can copy it, you can reproduce it, you can transform it, wala nang kasing copyright. So for example, Marcelo's work would already be in the public domain because the copyright has expired. So yun, pwede mong i-copy, pwede mong sabihin inspired by. Ngayon, if the copyright still exists and it still applies, there is a possibility of liability, especially if the artist is very zealous about his or her copyright and the artist would enforce. The artist has so many legal remedies available to her or him. So you will have liability. Ang defense mo lang dyan would be fair use. Hindi naman commercial yung use mo, etc., etc. But this is a matter of defense that a court will have to look into. In the meantime, you face a possible legal action. There's a second defense when the work is transformed. Lalo na ngayon, di ba? It's a digital era. Dami ng mga mishmash of artworks under American law. If the work is transformed, di ba? Yung if elements of a known work is transformed and a new message is created, that could be a defense. So even if it's for a commercial use, there would be no copyright liability because there would be a fair use of the work. And this principle or concept has been adopted in the Philippines in a case decided by the Supreme Court, yung transformative test. So when you are inspired by a work that is still copyrighted and you transform it and it becomes a new work in itself, containing a unique message, according to this transformative test, you would not be liable, even though you made an authorized work, provided that you meet the transformative test rule.
Thank you, Attorney.
Can I share something from there,
Sure.
very quick lang? Kasi sa academe na pinagdidiskusyon na namin ito, and we really, I mean, remind our students about, issues of plagiarism, what constitutes fair use, lalo na kung estudyante ka, as long as it is done within the context of an academic exercise, that constitutes fair use. Pero once na you have material gain from creating a particular work, whether you call it inspired, a homage, or even a derivative work, sabi ko sa kanila, you can be legally liable. Doon sa pwede kang habulin. Lalo na kung buhay pa yung artist, naroon yung mga heirs. Kasi lalo na ngayon, yung mga estudyante, may mga racket, may isang restaurant, gusto nila yung trabaho ng isang artist ang ilagay nila, no? Ikaw, hindi mo naman pipirma yung pangalan ng artist, no? It's inspired by this artist. Pero yung commercial establishment has something to gain. It's an Instagrammable environment na mag-a-add sa prestige at saka sa marketability. So may quantifiable element yung paggagawa mo ng artwork na yon. So meron ka, you can be complicit because kaya sinasabi namin sa mga artists, lalo na yung mga young, they try to get the young people na who are not very knowledgeable about all these implications. Pwede sila yung maging scapegoat sabihin pa, ito yung sinadjust nung young artist na di ba? Very early on in their studies, we tell them what constitutes fair use, derivative works, homage, inspired, what constitutes intellectual property infringement.
Mag-focus na lang sila sa mga works that are in the public domain. Right?
Yeah,
yung wala ng copyright. Kasi even though they may have a defense with respect to transformative element test, it's a defense. They will still have to undergo the hassle of facing a legal case and defending themselves. So again, best to be prudent to avoid legal liability.
Okay, may question tayo from someone who's also a family member of a national artist. This is from Christian Aguilar. And the question is, to file a case in forgery, do I have to prove the work is a forgery?
Of
And
course.
How does he protect himself? Kasi when he discloses yung basis niya for the forgery, then baka marinig ng mga forgers, is there a way that he could protect himself and the legacy of his father?
Actually, you can ask the court hearing the case. Diba? Now you can make the case that the information with respect to how an artwork can be deemed to be a forgery is actually like a trade secret. Diba? And then most courts, judges, when they appreciate that these details cannot be made public, they usually would agree to an in-camera or in their chambers. The reception of evidence would be in chambers. And that would be a very good strategy for artists and heirs to ask for that, so that the details of how they are able to spot forgeries would not be made public. Kasi if you make it public, no, you just empower a new generation of forgers, di ba? But you see, this kind of thing must be done by your lawyers, di ba? Your lawyers must know and must ask for this remedy.
What if a hypothetical follow-up question? Kunyari, someone like Christian sees a work na fake, obviously fake, brought to him for authentication. Can he seize it?
I would advise wag. Gawin yung ginagawa ni Toymi at ni Lee. You document it. Kasi alam mo, magkakaproblema yan eh. Na-expose ka sa legal liability if you seize it. If you seize it, they can take the position that you actually committed theft. Right? Because the painting, regardless of whether it's fake or not, it's property. And it's a property which belongs to them. And then, of course, they're going to defend its authenticity. So if you seize it, then you expose yourself to legal liability. Why expose yourself to legal liability, which then you would have to defend yourself in a case that they can file against you? Best to be prudent, document it, and then you ask the one who brought the painting to you to prove their identity, to prove the provenance, diba? Get all the information. And then we would require that, suppose the person says, oh, I'm just a broker, I'm not really the owner of this painting. You require the real owner to step up, to collect it, and you document who they are. I've spoken to Toym and Lee about this. When you structure it in that way, most of the time, di na nila binabalikan, di ba?
Yeah, totoo.
Di ba? So it's a more prudent way. Wala kang legal exposure, the document mo, and the onus is on them. Di ba? And you document their identities. Most people engage in this activity, illegal activity, would be put on notice, and more often than not, they will not return to you and to get that artwork. So maglagay ka ng procedures and processes. Document.
Paper trail.
Diba?
Paper trail.
Yeah, the paper trail. Yes.
We have a very interesting question naman from an artist perspective naman to. So we have in our audience Mr. Paul Benjamin Hilario. He painted a rice planting scene, parang Banawe rice terraces, in the manner of Van Gogh. And then a company in China credited it as a Van Gogh painting and made a lot of products.
Yeah, I read about that.
Yeah. I know.
May mga hapon dito sa company that made money off of his work.
Actually, ang problema kasi China, no? He would have to go to China to enforce his rights against that Chinese company. Unless the Chinese company has presence here, then you could sue the company, the subsidiary of the Chinese company here, di ba? So, an artist kasi not only has copyright but also has moral rights, di ba? You have a right to be credited to be the creator of a work, and no one has a right to attribute it to somebody else. And in fact, the rights of a artist with respect to moral rights can be enforced just like copyright. So meron ding administrative, civil, and criminal liability if somebody violates your moral rights. But ang obstacle lang talaga in the case of the artist is really whether the Chinese company has presence here. Otherwise, you'd have to go to China. So I guess the recourse really is social media, di ba? Press, social media.
Yeah. Ako naman, may suggestion lang ako, Ricky, dun sa, kasi kay, Mr. Hilario, no? Ang suggestion ko is, again, document well. And ang sabi ni Susan is to post it in social media. So meron siyang digital footprint ng nangyari. Because this can also work to your advantage. No? This extends your narrative and background as an artist na nangyari ito. No? Charge to experience na lang nga, pero this can actually be part of your entire story as an artist. No? Make it work to your advantage. Elevate it into a different level of existence in terms of your professional career.
I have a follow-up question from Christian Aguilar. Sabi niya, what about kung yung certificate of authenticity is a fake and they forged my signature? Can I get the COA?
Yeah. Yun ang sabi ko. We had a discussion about that, Toymi, no? If the certificate bears your alleged signature and you know it is forged, ibang usapan yun. Property mo yun eh. Di ba? Kasi what makes that certificate a certificate? Your supposed signature. But if it's not your signature, it's fake, ibang usapan yun. Di ba? So, yes, you can. See, Toymi, what he does is that he does a side note, di ba? Nagma-marginal note ka. that you're disclaiming the signature.
Yeah,
But you can also
binubura
seize
ko
it.
rin. Binubura ko rin.
Oo, binubura. Oo, pwede din yun.
Yung
Bura
iba
mo.
sinis ko. Sabi ko sa kanila, if you
Yeah.
want to get it from me, I'll have to have a legal demand for me to
Yeah.
surrender this to you.
Yeah.
Hindi na sila naghahabol.
Oo. Pag certificate of authenticity and you were the one who purportedly signed it but it's forged, then it's your property, di ba? Walang usapan about about ownership. They make it appear that it's your property, so you can retain it, or you can do what Tommy did, deface it, di ba?
Deface it.
May comment naman daw kay Marie Chris Castillo. Sinabi niya na, attorney, do you have a book about these informative issues? Ang ganda po kasi at mahalagang issues. I hope there will be a book about this topic. Ano po ang masasabi ng attorney time?
We have discussions about the need for a book on this So perhaps we can collaborate on it, no?
Pwede siguro, Attorney Susan, pwede nating kasi kakailanganin maganda itong magamit rin ng academia. I think we can and being tayong dalawa part of the academy also, maybe we can study this particular even a primer, a very simple primer on it.
Yes, I think it's a good project.
Yeah, lalo na ngayon kasi everything is the creative industry is involved in all aspects, lalo ngayon on online platform. I think these are very important issues and concerns that we need to educate our content creators, yung creative creators natin, so that they can be protected and they know kung ano yung ng laws na pwedeng mag-encompass sa kanila. Alam nila yung pwede nilang galawan. Alam nila yung mga parang hindi sila makapag-commit ng any infringement.
Ayan. So thank you, Marie Chris Castillo. Watch out for it. Lalabas na yan soon. Okay, there's a question from Lyle Duque. Ang sabi niya, can galleries use the excuse, we didn't know that it was a fake when we were asked to auction it. We didn't issue a certificate. Ayan.
Yeah, that would be the defense of the gallery. They were not privy, or they did not participate in any of the illegal acts. But you see, criminally, makakalusot sila because penal laws are strictly construed in favor of the accused. Pero civilly, baka magiging liable sila. Kasi the standard of the burden of proof is lower. And ang required lang doon, kasi may implied warranty ka when you sell it, di ba? So if there's a problem with it, the one who bought it can either rescind and demand the payment back, diba? And you could be liable for damages. And then you say, but I didn't know. But in a civil case kasi, ang importante lang is that there is a preponderance of evidence. If it can be established you did not, in fact, conduct due diligence, diba? And then you represented that this is a genuine work of art, you may be liable civilly. But you will certainly the one who was the work the owner of the work was forged can also sue you criminally, and then you will have to set up the defense. May exposure ka rin, and of course when you're sued criminally, regardless of the fact that you have a defense, may reputational risk sa iyo sa kumpanya mo, sa name mo, sa negosyo mo. And I think for art galleries, it's very critical that you really have a due diligence process, kasi you need to protect your reputation as well. As Toimi and Lee said, it's a matter of trust, right? And if you do not conduct due diligence, even though that can be a defense, your lack of knowledge, it will reflect badly on your reputation.
Following that train of thought, yung kay Paul Benjamin Hilario said, meron po ba tayong mga na-convict na cases sa dito, sa ganitong mga bagay?
To my knowledge, wala pa. Toily, would you know?
Kami wala pa. We went as far as blotters. Pinapa-blotter namin para it goes on public record. Yung pero pursuing anything na.
Dun sa forgery, wala pa rin akong nalaman masyado. Parang napag-uusapan na lang. Pero in terms of copyright infringement na yung resale rights, alam ko meron ng isa. So, yun. Ayun.
Meron kami mga ini-study na possible kasi mga serial forgers eh. I mean,
Violators.
we've been able to, and despite being informed several times and nariyan pa rin and other pag hindi pa rin tumigil talaga siguro mag-a-approach na kami kay Attorney Susan next year to have our first documented case of forgery that hopefully will be
Yeah.
Yeah, Lee has a question.
Yeah, I have a question. Kasi like we said earlier, it's very difficult if they just approach us through the internet and then they don't physically bring the work. So we cannot go through the process of the SPA and the affidavits, etc. So when we receive images of a questionable work, can we post that on social media like Facebook so that buyers can be made aware that these works are out there circulating and they're not authentic works?
You can, but don't identify the individuals because then you would incur liability or legal exposure for libel. So it's best that you just refer to the work and say that based on reports, these works are being represented to be the works of national artist Abdulmari Imao, but these works are not the works of my father, di ba? Pero wag ka na best that you don't mention the names kasi alam mo yung problema kasi sa libel, it's also criminalized in the Philippines, and if these are private parties, truth is not a defense di ba? Buti kung public officials sila, truth is a defense, but for private individuals, truth is not a defense. So it's best that best na lang para to avoid any legal liability, so you're not bothered and you don't have to meet a lawyer, di ba? Don't refer to the individuals, just refer to the work.
Yeah, Attorney Susan, ang plano namin gawin kasi since kino-collect pa lang namin sila and eventually we will post it, no? Kasi minsan nakakapagod na several dealers approach kami, authentic ba ito, ganyan, yun lang, we go over again and ganyan. Ang plano namin, we will post it under the heading that if you will approach the family with these works, we will parang it will not be entertained.
Yes.
Yun na lang ang magiging parang heading niya ng mga trabaho ito.
These works will not be the subject of any certificate of authenticity, di ba?
Yun lang,
family will.
Siguro maganda magkaroon ng public na parang
repository, di ba?
Repository na ito yung mga things. Don't buy.
That's why, Ricky, that's why we were discussing before, a collective management association is really needed because you could then agree to put up a Facebook page, right? Where all the questionable works can be deposited, di ba? Collective action to kasi sometimes when the information is segmented, only one gallery knows, only sina Lee and Toimi knows. If the information is not shared, then others can really be victimized. But if there's a public parang repository of all these types of works and the public can go and make it a part of their due diligence to check, that would be better for everyone.
We will make an action point on that talaga, attorney. Which brings me to my next question from the audience. Mr. Lawrence Rogero, I'm assuming na kasi di ba the art market is so segmented talaga. When you have to ask for authentication, you have to know who to approach. So sabi niya, is there an official body that has legal authority to authenticate artworks?
Not that I know of.
Talagang segmented, no?
Before I remember in the 70s and the 80s may panel of experts ang National Museum, but since they have improved on the services, they removed that kasi nagkaroon ng problema I think during the 80s about getting that document na supposedly parang magpo-prove na lalo na yung mga old masters nagpo-prove na authentic work. So I think the last I recall that office no longer exists within the National Museum. But ang alam ko ngayon lang is that whenever you bring out a particular artwork outside Philippine shores, lalo na trabaho siya ng purported work siya ng mga masters, national artist, respected, no? Dun sa you will need to have a clearance because para to prove that it is not a part of the national patrimony that's going outside the shores, no, of our country. So I think that's the only thing that ang ginagawa ng National Museum as of now, no, just to identify that the work is not part of the public collection, no, or the government collection.
We have two more questions before we round up kasi we're already ang tagal ng ating live discussion talaga, pero there's this question from Mimay Roman. Can I file against a master artist who sold me an old piece and I found out that it was not his work but it was from another artist? He just edited some features and changed it with his signature. The problem is I feel that the original artist is aware of this transaction. There.
Well, you can sue, and you can sue under the Art Forgery Act of 2001. And it's a strong case, and and my recommendation has always been, if you're going to sue a forger, you should sue them criminally, because that would be a faster. That would be that process is faster, and that really is a real leverage as opposed to a civil case. A civil case in the Philippines can last for as long as 25 to 30 years because of the endless appeal process and the many ways to delay the proceedings without any remedy. But a criminal case, once you have a probable cause finding by the prosecutor, the information will be filed with the trial court, and the trial court would issue a warrant of arrest. So there's already a leverage that you can have in order to either settle the case in accordance with terms that are satisfactory to you, or you can proceed and really prosecute the forger.
Thank you, Attorney.
And di ba Attorney Susan, rin yun? It's also parang defacement of an existing artwork.
Yeah, pero ang may right,
original artist.
The one. Yeah, the original artist is the one with the right to complain with respect to copyright infringement and violation of moral rights. But if he was aware of the transactions and authorized it, then he will never file a case. So your remedy available to Mimay would be to file a criminal case under the Art Forgery Act of 2001.
Misrepresentation kasi. This one is from June Dalisay.
He changed the signature He changed the signature, no?
Yeah. This one is from June Dalisay. Parang I'll just paraphrase it. Should artists apply for a copyright?
Okay, under the law, copyright vests from the very moment of creation. You don't have to register your work with the National Library or with the IPO as a designated agent of the National Library in order to have copyright. But I find when you enforce your right, it is so much easier to enforce it if you have a certificate of copyright deposit and registration. Why? Because of our legalistic and formalistic legal system. Most people cannot believe that you have a right unless you have a government certificate with a shiny seal. So in my long experience enforcing copyright, for example, if you send a demand letter at wala kang certificate of copyright deposit and registration, the target of the demand letter does not pay too much attention to you because they actually believe you cannot have a right without a certificate. Ibang usapan if you send a demand letter at may copyright ka certificate, with a shiny seal, doon they pay attention. Doon natatakot sila. So actually, you obtain the certificate of copyright deposit and registration not to get copyright, but to make it easier to enforce.
Okay. Attorney, paano kung kunwari na-publish naman yung mga works ng artist na to,
mas importante pa rin for targets, mas importante pa rin yung certificate of copyright deposit and registration. And let me share with you, when you file a case, most commercial court judges, they're the ones who hear and decide IP cases. They have no IP background. The secret is intellectual property is not a mandatory subject in law schools, most law schools. So most lawyers don't understand IP. And you can have judges who handle IP cases but never took up IP. So they don't understand it very well. It's a specialized field, it's a specialized law. So even they would will ask you, saan yung copyright mo? Then you would tell the judge, but you're under the law. Copyright vests from the very moment of creation. What? Sasabihin ng judge, what? That is so strange. It's so counterintuitive. And so my point is, kung wala kang certificate of copyright deposit and registration legally, it does not bar you from obtaining copyright, but it makes it harder for you to enforce your rights. So para siyang may, you like this term, Toymi, para may Jedi mind trick, yung certificate of copyright deposit and registration. Pag meron ka nun, legally, wala siyang probative value legally. Pero may Jedi mind trick siya. Para siyang nahi-hypnotize niya yung target.
Yeah. Alam mo, meron lang ako share lang na Ricky, nung old times, nung wala pa yung intellectual property office na ganito ka-active, yung enforcement, I know that dalawang ginagawa ng mga artists nung araw na it's either you publish it through catalogs, through an exhibition, or lalo na kung private work, ginagawa nila, kukunan nila ng litrato, isa-sign nila, isisil nila sa sealed envelope, registered mail, email it to themselves. Tapos naka-seal pa rin yun. Para pag nagkaroon ng problema balang araw, yun ang gagamitin nila. Pero ngayon, siguro, in lieu of, if you don't have time and you feel that it's immediate and you wanna secure it before you go to the intellectual property office to file the necessary documents.
Yeah, there's a Bureau of Copyright. There's a Bureau of Copyright now. With an amendment to the IP code, a Bureau of Copyright was created. So you can file it via the Bureau of Copyright of the IPO, and it can be done online. Just check the website of the IPO, because alternatively you would have to go to the National Library. And now there's a pandemic with the variants. I don't recommend that you go out, di ba? So best to do things online. Check the Intellectual Property Office website. I have to say, and I would like to commend the IPO. It's one of the professional government agencies, and their website is a very good one with all the information. And you can also contact them, and they respond.
Okay. Dami pa ring questions dito, pero we're out of time. So the questions involve yung copyright, number 1. Number 2, yung paano yung homage and fair use. And I think we should, if it's all right with you guys, let's continue with another discussion like this on fair use, copyright, at saka yung other issues relating to homages. If it's all right with you, Susan, Toym, Lee, let's do one.
Yeah, we would love to.
Fellow artists.
Yeah,
you.
I mean, we can. I mean, I was chatting with Attorney Divine. We need to have a session pa lang, fair use pa lang. Ang dami na natin pwedeng pag-usapan Hindi ba lalo na ngayon?
Divine, by the way, Divine is my colleague at Cruz, Marcelo, and Tenefrancia, and she also teaches IP.
Perfect. So ayan, another na lang po. Guys, sorry sa mga questions. Sorry, we will have a more focused discussion on copyright at saka yung homages and fair use next time. Dahil we ran out of time na 5:30 na. Maraming salamat, Attorney Susan Villanueva, Toym Imao, maraming salamat for sharing so much today. Final words?
Thank you very much, Ricky, for the invitation. I think what's so important is to know your rights and you enforce your rights. The law grants you multiple remedies, and it's best that you know that you have these rights, and I encourage everyone to enforce their rights. Thank you.
Thank you. Toym.
I always tell my artist friends and my students, an artist cannot just be this mythical being, in society. He is also a legal entity, a very important part of society that has a function. So it is also important that as much as you hone your creative skills, you should also be knowledgeable about where you legally stand within that society. What are your rights, and acknowledge yourself also as a legal being, within the framework of a particular community.
Thank you, Toem. Ali, any...
Yes, thank you very much. Ang dami ko ulit natutunan from Susan at mula sa aking saling asawa. And sa iyo, Ricky, siguro i-emphasize ko lang ulit yung due diligence on the part of the buyer and the seller. Kasi the seller naman, you can always approach us. We have created a Facebook page for Abdulmari Imao. So you can send your inquiries there through messages, through Messenger, or as we discussed earlier, para makita nyo, we'll also put there yung mga questionable works so that you are also informed. Thank you.
Ako naman, I'd like to thank all of you for sharing so much. Tapos, sa audience natin, we really have good laws to protect our rights. We just have to enforce them, to get to know the laws and to enforce them. So, please watch out for the next talk na ganito. We'll be announcing it on our Fundacion Sansó page. And after this talk, makikita nyo yung contact details for Attorney Susan and for the Imao family. Maraming salamat sa inyong lahat. Maraming salamat sa ating speakers at sa ating team na nag-aayos nito from behind. At maraming salamat sa ating mga audience for sharing this afternoon with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Stay safe,
Maraming
everyone.
salamat.
Stay safe.
Ingat.
Ingat.